Welcome to a tournament and a tea break from Britwatch Sports. I'm Ros Satar and I'm joined by Anna Smith, Fed Cup doubles player for our good old Team GB. And it's a coming together of the Love Sport tennis show. We're doing this in collaboration with Love Sport Radio, and we're here to look at the road to the US Open.
I'm excited to be here, talk all things tennis.
We are gearing up for the final slam of the year. And it's been a strange year, I think. to be fair, we've had a few ups and downs, probably more so on the women's side than the men's. So, should we kick off with the ladies?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably been one of the most unpredictable seasons we've had for a long time, or getting even more unpredictable, can we say, than it has been in previous years. But it's been incredible, really.
I mean, we've gone from, like, at the beginning of the year, Naomi Osaka backed up her somewhat chaotic US Open win. And she's going to come around and be a first-time slam defendee for her. I was glad that she backed it up. And then she got to Europe and it all seemed to just go pear-shaped for her.
Yeah, you kind of think it looked a little bit like we were going to have that dominating force in women's tennis again. And then all of a sudden, like you said, she came to Europe and had her usual kind of meltdown. You're kind of just thinking, well, you know, at some point she's going to have to try and change this funk that she's had in Europe and do something a little bit different. But again, she kind of had that slump and just struggled a bit. And she spoke about, I think she came out on Twitter the other day and mentioned something about kind of not falling out of love with tennis, but really struggling and not enjoying it the last few months.
Oh, well, I mean, that was evident at Roland Garros. I mean, even as far back as Stuttgart, we were talking about Stuttgart, and she'd never had a good run in Stuttgart. And it's difficult clay. It's very slick.
Slippery.
It's like, it's not nice at all. We played, they had us testing out Babolat rackets, and it was like being Torval Lundin, but with a tennis racket in your hand. I've never slid around so much. And she's always, she's always had in the back of her mind that she's always been injured after Stuttgart. Yeah. And it's the same with grass as well. She had it in her mind that she's not good in grass. And I really do think that mentally that whole European swing for her was a complete funk. She hated every minute that she was in. I think at one stage I joked, maybe in Birmingham, I said, on behalf of my continent, I apologise. But hopefully, I mean, she looks much more relaxed. I don't know whether you saw the Twitter thing that Katie Spellman put together of how to do media stuff, and she looked a lot happier than we've seen her of late. Do you think that now she's back on hard courts, she's going to feel a little bit more steady?
Yeah, well, she kind of has to. She couldn't feel much worse, I guess, than she has felt the past couple of months. It's a big thing for a tennis player to come out and say, do you know what, actually, I haven't been enjoying the game at all. You don't want to give your opponents any weakness, and she's kind of given them a big thing right there. So for her to come out and say that, she must have been in a pretty bad place. So, kind of coming home and having those home comforts and back on the hard courts where she's obviously had some success, you'd like to think that she'd be able to turn this around. But, the proof's in the pudding, and we'll see how it goes, but I feel like she's probably in a much better place, and I think she must have come through that for her to willingly put that out there in the public. So I think she must have sort of turned a corner and be back to enjoying playing tennis again.
I mean, this is going to be a big thing for her, having to defend her title, and with everything that happened last year. I was thrilled that she backed it up in Australia because she won it on her own merits, and even then in that final she still had a bit of a wobble. Kvitova had come back and she had to, she was upset on court. She took herself off for a toilet break to compose herself and then came back, and the rest is history. So do you think she's still got like mountains to climb to deal with not having her heart on her sleeve all the time?
Yeah, I think she's always going to be one of those players who is very emotional. I don't think she's going to be able to hide it. I think it's just going to be a case of learning to deal with it a little bit better, and then just kind of working on things that can kind of calm her down, because like you said, she doesn't hide anything. It's written all over her face, and that's what is hard as a tennis player. Obviously you kind of want to have that poker face and show no emotion, but she's completely the opposite. And you see everything that's written in her face. So it's going to have to be a tactic, but then is that what makes her her? And if you take that away, then, is that taking away something that's maybe a strength but also a potential weakness as well. So it's hard, you know. You don't want to turn her into a robot, because I think that takes away who she is as a person.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find that right balance. And, you know, I think she's had so much so quickly, in terms of, you know, she almost came out of nowhere to win that US Open, especially in the controversial circumstances that it was. And then to back it up at Australia was an incredible effort, and be world number one at the same time. And then you're just thinking, like, you've had so much happen to you, there was always going to be a come down.
Yeah.
So I think she's done pretty well, considering.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think I remember, because obviously she won Indian Wells earlier that year, and she was so deliciously quirky, her and Kazatkina in press. And I just remember thinking at the time, I really don't want that to be knocked out of you. And yet I think in Roland Garros and Wimbledon, you just saw signs of her, like, I just can't deal with any of this. So yeah, fingers crossed that it's a good run for her. Although the Rogers Cup is where we see a lot of the elite players coming back to the tour after a long Wimbledon break, and already we've seen a few big names go by the wayside. Angelique Kerber split with her coach and really just looked rusty as all get out. So she's gone. Barty and Kenin, that was a good match, and Kenin's a little firecracker. She's so feisty. She's got so much belief in herself. You know, it was a great match, a well won match, but that's the world number one gone in her first match. I don't feel quite as worried for Barty though, because she seems to be able to handle everything and you know, with typical Aussie grit. So she's like, yeah, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I just lost a tennis match. That's it. So, but do you think that she's going to be a real challenger for the US Open?
Yeah, most definitely. I don't think you can count out Ash, because, like you said, she's just so cool, calm and collected. You know, nothing seems to faze her. She's like, world number one. Oh, my world number one. It's, you know, it's crazy.
Right, that'd be right.
Yeah, but then she's also so modest as well. You know, she always talks about we. She's never like I. She's always like we and my team. We did this. We did that. So there's no way she'd ever get carried away or, you know, become complacent or arrogant and things like that. And I think that's probably going to be the basis for her longevity, I reckon. You know, even if she kind of isn't number one per se, she can be top five. I think she's going to be there for a long time to come. She's got so many weapons and just got such a wise head on her shoulders.
Yeah, for somebody, I mean, the fact that she stepped away from the sport when she did, you know, we were talking about Osaka being brave enough to put that on Twitter, that she'd fallen out of love with the game, to actually walk away from the game at a comparatively young age and then come back. You know, we were lucky enough to talk to her coach, Craig Tyser, at Eastbourne. And he said, when she told me she was going to come back, I made it as hard as possible for her and said, you know, you're going to have to do a long training block, and I mean long, to get you back into fitness. And it wasn't like she hadn't done anything. She'd been doing Big Bash cricket, but I mean, it just shows she turns her hand to cricket and becomes a world beater. So yeah, I'd like to see her make a real show of this. I don't think our former world champion Kerber is going to do much until she gets herself a coach and gets her form and confidence seem to be shot to pieces. Another person that is trying to make a comeback but just can't string it together is Sharapova. She lost against Annette Kontaveit, who's also had a bit of an up and down season. She had that fantastic final in Stuttgart and then kind of fell off a cliff. So on the hard court, she looks like she's coming back into some form. But do we think that we're at the end of... Is this the end game for Sharapova?
Yeah, wow. You kind of wonder why she's doing it. What is she gaining out of it? She's like, you know, I want to keep working hard, and then she was saying she could take some encouragement from that defeat. But what encouragement can you take when you've been a 5-time slam champion and you've won every single slam? You know, why keep playing when you're losing first round week in, week out, and you're kind of constantly battling injuries? And I think she's around 32 now. You know, what else does she have to achieve in this game? You know, she's been world number one, Grand Slam champion, and you think, why put yourself through this? It's not like the comeback has been a great success, is it?
No.
It's been a bit of a
Not
shambles, to be fair. And you do sort of wonder what she is gaining out of it and why she's doing it still.
I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that she's doing it so that she leaves on her terms. But I don't think you're ever going to leave on your terms, because forever you will be known for what happened. That you'll never shake it off. you can be a five-time slam champion, but you will always have that on
The stigma.
the
yeah.
stigma. You know, and it doesn't matter that you served your ban. It doesn't matter of any kind of exoneration that you feel that you can put forward. You know, it's a tricky one. I can only assume she's doing it so that she's leaving on her own terms and feels that she's the one that's pulling the trigger on her career and not being forced out. But like you say, the comeback's been. Well, it's not really been a comeback at all.
She won. I think she won the title in Tianjin,
Yeah.
and that was about as good as it's got so far. And
Yeah.
you know, she has shown in patches that she can string it together when she stays fit. But the problem's staying fit. You know, at Wimbledon when she pulled out 5-love down, I don't think that looked great on her. To be honest, you
No.
know that. I think that was pretty poor from her. She could have played one more game.
Yeah.
So you know, I really don't think she's doing herself any favors and. She goes into press and gives these very, you know, computer-generated answers, and you know, there's just no emotion there. And she's like, "I'm just going to keep working hard." And you kind of—it's the usual spiel you hear from her, and you're just like, "Well, I don't understand it anymore. You're not getting any younger, so what is the point?"
Yeah, that's true.
She obviously has her own motivations for it, and she would never share that with any of the press, that's for sure.
No, quite. Talking of computer-generated responses, it was a very rusty start for Jo as well. And it's her first appearance after that now infamous sort of taking down of a journalist at Wimbledon after she lost. In the quarter-final, it has to be said, after the season that she had and the fall from grace that she had, you know, her bounce back this year has been little short of phenomenal. You and I, the first time we actually met on the Love Sport Tennis Show, we were saying, you know, what's gone wrong with Jo? Nothing's gone wrong with Jo. She reached the semi-final of a Grand Slam, having been in shocking form the year before, and on a surface that she'd never won a first-round match in. Actually, that was pretty good. And she reached the quarterfinal, having been bounced out in the second round last year. I don't feel as worried because she was up against Yastremska, who just hits the fences, goes for all of her shots, really doesn't care. She's a clean hitter from the back of the court, and she was always going to be a tough draw for Jo. That was my feeling. And as soon as Jo started confidently, I thought, okay. And then Yastremska broke back, and I thought, now this is where we're going. It was two fairly competitive sets as well. I don't think Jo did much wrong. I just think she looked rusty. So I don't feel quite so worried about Jo. I'll be more worried if she doesn't get some headway in Cincy.
With Jo, I think it's so hard because she can turn up and suddenly play lights out tennis, but then she can have these kind of rusty results. But I think, you know, she's one of those players that we've said before has that inner belief, and she knows that when she brings her A game, she can beat anyone. And the thing is, it's kind of synonymous with women's tennis. You have so many ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and I think she's one of those players that will have those, but she'll never have no confidence in herself. And I don't think she'll be too fazed by this loss. You know, there's still a few more weeks to go before the US Open, and you know she's going to want to be peaking for the US Open. So if the next sort of one or two don't go well, then I don't think she's going to be panicked.
No, I don't. I don't think so. And I think she's actually down for this new Bronx one as well. And I suppose I guess it will be how she goes in these two big Premier mandatories, whether or not she'll play the Bronx one. But she doesn't really seem to worry too much about overplaying. And her game, of course, works beautifully on hard courts. It's good and aggressive, and the hard courts are made for that kind of game. I'm not too worried about her, and I also think that having spoken to or having had Dmitry Zaviolov come and talk to us at Roland Garros, I mean, I was inspired by this guy, much less her. You know, he was amazing. He's so quiet and articulate and very well thought out in what he says. I can see why she's actually progressed so well over this past year with him. So I'm hoping that that this is just the first match back after several weeks off. And yeah, fingers crossed that she'll come out. Is there anybody else we want to pick on the women, or should we show the men a little bit of concern as well?
I think we should show the men a little bit of love. Who should we start with?
Well, I mean, obviously, much for the men, a lot of the elite men are coming back for the first time in a long break. So for those that don't necessarily know, after Wimbledon, there's this strange patch of clay court matches that nobody, or clay court tournaments that nobody really pays much attention to. Unless you're Dominic Thiem. Well, he couldn't play in the Polar Bear Classic in Alaska, so I think he just opted for like clay.
I think so. The home title in Kitzbühel. Well, I saw him win that, and you can see how much it meant to him. But it does seem a bit strange to throw in a row clay court tournament after Wimbledon. But
I mean, Zverev as well went to Hamburg. I think made the semi-final. But I mean, it always, people always say to me, well, people who don't know that like tennis is actually all year round and just wonder what I do for the other 50 weeks of the year as a journalist.
And isn't just Wimbledon, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Apparently, who knew?
Surely not. I didn't know that.
It's the most commonly asked. If I tell anybody that I'm a sports journalist, it's the most commonly asked thing. What do you do?
It's the most commonly asked question. They're like, "Oh, so what do you do after Wimbledon?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I do after Wimbledon?"
I sleep for 2 weeks and then it starts all over again.
Yeah, I play for 2 weeks and then 50 weeks off.
I know, but Zverev was another one that went for the clay, and I suppose the argument is there are points to be had, and because a lot of the elite players don't play, you can just pick up free ranking points. But then the likes of Thiem and Zverev don't particularly need free ranking points. If you were Thomas Fabiano, yes, I could imagine that you'd want to do that, or Marco Cecchinato, yes, you'd want to pick up points. But Thiem worries me all the time because he overplays, and I don't have as many expectations with him on the hard courts as I do with maybe Zverev, but he's had a particularly torrid time. I do feel sorry for our friendly neighbourhood giraffe at the moment because when he signed up with Lendl and then won the World Tour Finals, I thought this was the turning point for him. And then it all went pear-shaped. He's split with his manager, and it's a particularly nasty public spat. And it definitely had an impact on him in Roland Garros and also for Wimbledon, which are two slams that you'd expect him to do quite well. Lendl has resigned while all this is going on and that's got to be the final kick in the teeth for him, surely.
I don't really get what's going on with him a little bit. You would have thought this would be a massive thing for him to sort out, that he's mentioned in press a few times about trying to sort out his management situation and things like that, but it's something that he shouldn't be dealing with. You would have thought he's got enough people around him to be able to help him out with this, but it just seems that he's kind of taken everything on his shoulders and kind of wants to do it all himself. And obviously his tennis has taken a hit because, I mean, I don't really know what he's been doing. I can't really think of anything.
Well, getting his racket strung.
Yeah.
And booking courts.
Pretty much.
Isn't this... I'm not being funny, I know that he has an unwavering belief in his father as his coach, and calls him the best coach he's ever had, but I'm not being funny, but can't Papa Zverev do some of this stuff for him? It doesn't have to be him, surely.
But yeah, that's what I'm sort of wondering. He has got enough people around him to help him out, and he should be focusing on the tennis because ultimately he's the player, and kind of those kind of things should be sorted out by someone else. And for it to have dragged on this long, it doesn't look great. And I'm a little bit confused as to why it's taken so long to sort it out.
No, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see because he and Thiem, I think, are still very much in the forefront as the chasing pack that are the most likely to win a slam and break this domination of the big three. But right now where we sit, for me, Thiem is the one that's probably going to get that breakthrough at Roland Garros at some stage. And Zverev, it's a miracle if he makes it to the second week. When he makes it to the second week, everybody's like, that's like kind of a shock result.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen. But let's have a look at some of the Brits. I mean, we've just been watching Dan Evans, who put up quite a spirited fight against Rafael Nadal, and he broke him in the first game, and then I think was serving for the set.
He was 6-4 in the tiebreak, had 2 set points, and then last 6-5 point, he just chiselled a second serve forehand back, and I was like, no, game over. And then Rafa just dispatched a forehand, and against those top guys, you can't afford to chisel a forehand return in the court and hope they're going to miss. And
what's he going to learn from something like this?
Huge amounts of confidence gained, I would have thought, being able to push Rafa so close. he's proven in this comeback that he has got the talent and he has got the potential to give anyone a match. You know, even when he played Roger, he got really close. It was just a few points here and there, but you know, he has the game to worry the top players. It's just a case of obviously doing it week in, week out, and we do forget that he's still kind of coming back, and what he has achieved so far is pretty remarkable, going from scratch to, I'm not sure what his ranking is now, but it's phenomenal.
So somewhere around the 50s, I think, 52 maybe.
That's incredible. From when you think about where he's come from last year to what he is now, I don't know if even him in his wildest dreams would have ever imagined that.
Then what about Kyle Edmund then? He is in desperate need of some form. He's had a bit of a disaster of the year. He had that good run at the Indian Wells Challenger, and then it all seemed to go a bit pear-shaped for him.
He's just had a few niggly injuries, hasn't he? He's just not quite been able to get any form going, any consistency. Just kind of, you know, he'll play a good match here and there, and then it just seems like another niggle comes out, and you know, then it has to take a couple of weeks off and rehab that, and it's just he hasn't quite got the momentum. And you know, obviously he had a good win first round here, but again, it's just trying to get that momentum, get matches. And you know, I think he's one of those players that's very dependent on match confidence. You know, when he's struggling, he's not going for that forehand as much, the serve doesn't look quite as good, and you know, maybe this week he can be here for a big run.
Of course, there's one more, you know, at the risk of sounding very bad about, you know, brushing Cameron Norrie under the carpet, who's also actually been playing some good tennis, and it's good to see him back on the hard courts. I think he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. We have this young chap called Andy Murray that seems to be making a few waves. Apparently, he's quite good at tennis.
Yeah, he's not too shabby, is he? The name sort of rings a bell.
Yeah, I think he's won a few tournaments somewhere. Something called the US Open and some kind of Olympic thing.
Maybe a Wimbledon thrown in. I don't know.
A couple of those, I think. Yeah, I mean, Andy's comeback has been nothing short of miraculous, I would say.
Are we surprised though?
No, because the sheer force of will in the man is remarkable, and I think if anybody is going to make a success of that particular hip operation and be the first person to come back and do it in singles, it's Andy Murray.
Yeah, you said it. He's sort of a freak of nature, and the sheer determination that he has, but it was the same thing. He didn't want to retire on the fact that he was injured. He wanted it to be on his own terms, and obviously he wanted the surgery for his quality of life, but I don't think anyone could have predicted what was going to happen. You know, the fairy tale in Queens when him and Feliciano go out and just play lights out tennis and you know, win the tournament, and obviously Feliciano winning the singles, but it was just incredible, and to see that many people watching doubles as well was massive for the game. And it's been nice to have some interest and publicity on the doubles, even, you know, once he goes back to singles, it will probably die down again, but it's been good to have that. And, you know, I'm excited for his singles comeback. And
do you think he will come back in Cincy?
I don't know. I saw an interview with him the other day, and he said there's no rush. You know, he said he was feeling very close and things are progressing in the right direction, and he mentions about playing in front of crowds in practice, and that was something that he wasn't used to. And it was just kind of getting used to those nerves again, which he obviously hasn't felt for a little while. So I think that's something, and he said that he started feeling more comfortable. So it wouldn't surprise me if he potentially plays a singles tournament very soon.
I mean, I was kicking myself. The 1 year I decided not to do Cincy, which is a great tournament. It's like Eastbourne but with Americans. It's a very sort of low-key footprint, and players walk around, and you know, people aren't obnoxious like maybe, you know, at Indian Wells they're very kind of up there in your grill, whereas it's like Eastbourne, they're like, "What's up? How you doing?"
Very American.
It is. It's amazing. Players can just walk around. And it's a great run tournament, and I can understand why he wants to do it, because there's not that many people not that many press that go to Cincy, certainly British press, although there might be more if he goes now. But it's a good tournament. It's a tournament I think he's done well at, and you know, like compared to Indian Wells, which seems to be a real bugbear for him. And also, we're talking about best of 3 versus best of 5 tennis, and he'll be testing himself up against some of the best. Although, let's be honest, if he does play singles for the first time, I would imagine maybe 1 or 2 rounds, and then because he'll come in as, I mean, nobody in their right mind would not give him a wild card.
No, definitely not. I think he'll have pretty much the pick of tournaments when he comes back, and in terms of tournament directors wanting to give him wildcards, that's for sure. You can guarantee it's going to be a sellout. So it's just a case of, I think he's a smart guy, and he knows, he's had it in the back of his head that he might have to retire. So he's not going to want to rush it, and he's only going to come back when he's good and ready. But for him to be talking in the sense that, you know, he feels very close, I think it's very encouraging, and it would be a shock if he didn't play a singles tournament in this American swing.
Yeah, I think. Do you think that the team around him are strong enough to stop him from, to save him from himself? Because obviously the adrenaline is flowing, and you know he's very close to a singles comeback. But you wonder at the back of the mind, he's thinking, shall I enter the US Open? Do you think the team around him is strong enough to say, be sensible? Do you think he's strong enough to stop himself from jumping into a slam too soon? Because watching that Australian Open match was something surreal, because he'd made the announcement before I flew, and I woke up to, like, my Twitter line had gone crazy, and I woke up at 3 a.m, and that was, you know, heading off for a flight, and then the match itself, I was sat next to a colleague, and we were like, there's no shame in going out in 3 sets to Roberto Batista Agut, you know, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. And then, of course, you know, he won the 3rd set, and we were like, oh, well, there's no shame in going out in 4 sets. And then, of course, he won that, and we were like, he's going to make it to the semi-final, isn't he? But you wonder whether he needs to be saved from himself sometimes.
I think probably before he would have struggled to say no, and that desire to come back, but I think he's a little bit smarter, and I think that whole Australian Open experience where he kind of half retired yet half didn't has been a massive thing, and I think now he has maybe a little bit of a different perspective, and he said something about trying to prolong his career, so I don't think he's in the same mind frame where he just wants to get out on court as soon as possible. If he's not ready, I think him and his team will decide that the US Open is a no-go, and then they'll wait. So I'd be shocked if he did come back and he wasn't ready. I think I'd probably say 99% sure that he'd come back when he is fully ready.
So finishing off this path for our road to Roland Garros, our road to US Open, who do we think is going to come out of the winner of these tournaments? Because they're fairly big tournaments. And really, is it going to set down any kind of marker for the US Open?
On the women's side, again, you just pick it out of a hat, to be honest. As we've seen, you know, Ash Barty has gone out your first round against Kenin, but, you know, is that a shock again? Kenin's one of the upcoming players on the tour, so for me, it'll actually be interesting to see how Serena does this American swing, especially with her playing a few tournaments before a slam, which doesn't seem to happen too often these days. You know, she can get a bit of a run going, maybe even win one of these tournaments. I think we mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago that, you know, she was struggling with the whole getting across the line because she hasn't put herself in that scenario for a while, and then all of a sudden it always seems to come at a Grand Slam where there's so much on the line. So it'll be interesting, you know, if she were to win one of these big ones, it would put her in the running again, and it'll be interesting to see Osaka as well, how she can bounce back, and now that she's regained her love for the sport, as she says, and if she can find some form.
Yeah, I mean, Serena's actually playing later on this evening, or, you know, in the small hours of the morning.
A tough one again.
Mertens isn't an easy draw at all.
Not at all.
So that's a good test for her, or a bad test for her, depending on which side of the fence you fall. So it'll be interesting to see if she comes through this. I think if she doesn't, Cincy might be a better one for her. It's another decent tournament that I think she's had a relatively good run of success at.
Would she play it though? That's the thing. That's the thing. She seems to be quite stubborn though, isn't she, in terms of what she does before slams.
But I mean, then Cincy, don't forget there's a week between Cincy and the US Open. So that's the week that we have Winston-Salem for the men, and now this new one at the Bronx, because Joe's down for the Bronx. But, you know, we'll see what that goes with. She's unlikely to drop down to an international, I would have thought.
No, I'd be shocked if she does. It doesn't really seem to be her style nowadays. But
No.
you know, maybe it's something that she should consider. She said something about playing at Wimbledon. She said that she might need to play a few tournaments before a slam. So maybe this is something. Obviously, she'll hope that won't be the case and she can do well at one of these two. But you know, nothing with Serena ever surprises us. I don't think we expect the unexpected with her.
So there's no point in putting you on the spot for figuring out who's going to win this tournament then.
No, I don't like predictions, and you know this as well.
I know. Well,
how about you predict?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my thing with like seeing people like Nadal sort of come back is that he will always blitz through people that he's supposed to beat, and then when he gets to sort of more hardened opposition, that's when he has a bit of a wobble. But on this draw, he doesn't really have that much opposition. You know, his draw's quite favourable, so you know it wouldn't surprise me if he wins this one.
Well, he has got Fognini to play in potentially in the quarters.
And Fognini does get under his skin.
Yeah, and I remember a few years ago when he had that 2-sets-to-love lead at the US Open, and all of a sudden I switched on an hour later and Fognini's making the biggest comeback I've ever seen. So
I'd love to say that I could see Zverev winning, but I can't.
I think if he can get a few matches this week,
Yeah.
I think he'll be happy with that and start regaining a little bit of momentum. But you sort of have to look at Rafa, don't you, and think he'd probably be a red hot favourite for this week.
Yeah, I think so. And team, I wouldn't, you know, I never would put him as a particularly good hard court. You know, he'll be steady and he'll go quite deep. His draw's not that bad, but I think if he comes up against Rafa, he'll just melt. On the women's side, the draw's a little bit of a mess, really. So Osaka's probably my pick, or maybe Halep's obviously the defending champion. And how's she doing?
A set down. To
Okay,
Jennifer Brady.
so that could be another
Upset.
shocker. While we're talking of shockers, actually, Sloane Stephens. What is going on with her?
Again, Sloane is one of those ones that I think she peaks for the Grand Slams. It's like she won't do anything, and all of a sudden she goes and wins the US Open, and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So for me,
You're not
with
worried.
her, I wouldn't be surprised if she suddenly turned it on at Flushing Meadows, where she's got such good memories. But with Sloane, I think it's one of those where, you know, she's going to have an incredible week one week, and then if she doesn't fancy it, it might not go so well the next week.
Okay, so you're make you pick something from here, aren't you?
I am.
I'm going to pick. Oh God, I'm going to pick Kenin.
For the title. Do you know what? I'm going to hold my hands up next week. If Kenin's champion, I'm going to hold my hands up and say, Ross, you are too good at this.
You have read my predictions. They're
Yeah.
terrible, so I really wouldn't
Do you know
worry
what? I
about it.
actually think they can't be any worse than mine. I don't think I've ever predicted one match right in my life. So
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe I'd probably have an outside flush on either Burton's or Pliskova. Pliskova's looking in fairly decent form. Bencic should look good in hers. There's some good names to come out of this draw, even though it's been carnage. But let's see. This time next week we will be talking about Cincinnati. So that'll be the second Masters and Premier Mandatory in a row. So by then we should have a better idea of where people's form is.
God, will we? Tennis tour is so hard to predict. So I don't know. We will find out next week.
But anyway, thank you, Anna, for joining me for
having
this.
me.
And you have, of course, been listening to Ross Satar from Britwatch Sports in collaboration with Love Sport Radio for Tournament and Tea Break.